Welcome to Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast. I'm your host, Lars.
And I'm Patrick.
In this 9th episode of the 7th and final season of Treknicity, we present to you a recap of the 8th episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, entitled Under the Cloak of War. Now, before we get started, please let us warn you that this episode deals with the topics of war, death, and PTSD. If you're sensitive to these topics, please stop watching now. We promise we won't take it personally.
Yeah.
Well,
this is the kind of episode that, we have to put some trigger warnings. It's even going to deaden my need to point out that Ortegas didn't get the lead in this episode where she should have. Because, this was an intense episode. But here's hoping Melissa Navi can really sing well.
Let's not forget this is full of spoilery goodness.
Yep, let's get the spoilers going. So, previously, we got the Klingon War, we've got Discovery Klingons, and a splash of Spackle. Because, Spock and Chapel are going to be Spackle from now on. So we begin our episode in the Prospero system where they're meeting up with the USS Kelsey May, and that's a fugly ship.
That's the kind of weird. It just looked like a I don't know, a bastardized surfboard with a warp engine.
Yeah, pretty much. But the planets there have been warring for a while under Federation jurisdiction. They finally got to peace thanks to the ambassador that the Enterprise is coming to transport. This ambassador, though, is a Klingon defector by the name of General Dakra, formerly the Butcher of Jagal. At least he's not a fucking Discovery Klingon. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Pike is fairly cordial when he comes on board because it's Pike, and he was ordered that he's to extend every hospitality. But and of course, Ra wants a tour. So meanwhile, on the bridge, Uhura's talking about all the diplomatic achievements Ra has gone through, but Ortegas doesn't trust him because he's a Klingon, and she knows that he's up to something and he's the bad guy. It gets tense pretty quickly because Ortegas is, she's not buying it. She goes about how this guy is the Butcher of Jagal, just as he walks on the bridge. So there's tension real quick. But he ignores this, moves on, talks about the view and how it's better than on Klingon ships, and then they move on, thankfully.
Did note one thing you did say there, and it's nitpicking. I'm going to freely admit it's nitpicking. But they're talking about Klingon birds of prey. Technically, they don't exist yet in canon. The birds of prey were given or were acquired during a technology exchange between the Klingons and the Romulans, which did not happen until, I want to say, late second season or mid third season of the original series.
Yeah,
again,
but let's be honest, they've got Discovery Klingons, so...
Yeah, and also, I mean, at least it's not as bad as the first Abrams verse movie and the dude during the Kobayashi Maru referring to the Klingon ships as warbirds.
Fair enough. So. Yeah, could be worse. Although, to be fair, J.J. Abrams, despite the movie not existing, did do better Klingons than Discovery. I'm just going to say that. Put that out there. That's truth. Because we didn't have to look at him nearly as much. Okay. So they go to the bar, and Ra's kind of not a fan of his own people because Spock was working to please. He figured out he's trying to program things to program the replicator to make Raktajino. Yay! Awesome. Of course, he makes it. It was cold before, so he turns up the temperature, and Ambassador Ra burns himself. So they go to sickbay. Thanks, Spock. Spock seems to be messing up a lot in this episode. So Mbenga spots Ra walk in, and he has a panic attack. So Chapel goes off to deal while he goes and tries not to collapse. And that's where we cut to the credits.
Didn't you say something about during the credits? There's certain times when the Enterprise looks like a pizza cutter.
Yeah, I don't know what it was all. I mean, they're just these shots. Sometimes you have the nice shot of them flying, and sometimes it's kind of cutting like this, and just the saucer looks pizza cutter thin. It's like, whoa, that's weird.
Well, I mean, there is the Enterprise-shaped pizza cutter you can order off of Amazon, so there is that.
Fair enough. But yeah, otherwise the ship looks beautiful. Although I do miss the animation from last week.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Because that helped lighten the tone a lot more, and boy, we're gonna need some lightening of the tone.
Exactly.
So, after the credits, we flash back a few years to the moon of Jagal, where Chapel comes in on a shuttle. They fly down and beam her right into the middle of the war zone. She meets Commander Buck Martinez, the CMO, who is played by Clint Howard.
Which would be... I honestly don't know how many times he's been on Star Trek because I didn't look it up before this episode. But you can't forget his first appearance, which was during the original series when he was just a wee little tacker, and he introduced the Enterprise bridge crew to the ever-famous Chanya.
Yep. Yeah, he played Baylock, and just as a kid, he now has the record for the longest period between his first and most recent appearance after Walter Koenig. He beat out Walter Koenig, who obviously didn't appear till the second season of TOS, and his last appearance was the voice of his grandson near the end of Picard. So let's see here. He appeared in the original series. He was Grady in Deep Space Nine, and a couple other. He appeared as Muck in Star Trek Enterprise's first season episode Acquisition. He was in Orion in Star Trek Discovery, and now this one. So yeah, he's been in a lot of Trek.
A lot.
Yeah. He's almost more famous than his brother. No, he's not.
No.
But he's got a special place in the heart of Trekkies. So there you go. Okay, so we might check back with Clint a little later, but yeah, immediately there's some bombing going on. He's dismissive of Chapel kind of getting packed. And he points out Dr. Mbenga, who's sitting there in a bathtub. At least that's what it looked like after a few glances through. Either way, he wasn't very dressed. So immediately after that, they get a warning that there's incoming transport of wounded. They go into triage mode. Mbenga shows up, and they start triaging, including one guy who looks like he's pretty much going to die. They can't do anything, so Mbenga comes up with throws him into the transport buffer, which obviously he knew how to do because he will use it in the future. So, leaves him in the pattern buffer. That brings us back to the present day, where Pike comes in to get some Delton parsley. Chapel joins them. They discuss Raw, the butcher. Jakal. And they're going to have a dinner for him.
And Pike wants Chapel and Mbenga to come and join them.
Put on their best face. They discuss having to go to dinner. We get a flashback to a dying soldier on their operating table, where literally Chapel reaches in and pumps his heart till he starts not being dead. But we'll get back to Ensign Pumpy Heart in a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to say that this episode has probably been the most graphic when it comes to especially scenes of war that I've ever seen in Star Trek.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I mean, I think DS9 had some brutal episodes, especially, I don't remember the one where Nog lost his leg, but yeah. This isn't the first time that Star Trek's had to delve directly into war and what it does to Starfleet, but this is the harshest.
Yep, especially there's a shot where Chapel gets sprayed in the face with blood.
Yeah, which happens when you're in the middle of when you're dealing with surgery in a war zone.
Right.
So we cut to outside the captain's quarters where Ortegas is marching back and forth because she doesn't want to go and deal with the butcher in there. And Mega looks at her and talks her down and says, yeah, you just have to do what you have to do.
You have to put your Starfleet
So they go in,
on.
and the ambassador is telling stories about making peace. And Chapel is struggling to hold it together. So Spock tries to help. He changes the subject and decides to do some literary I can't remember the word. Comparison with the Art of War, and I forget the Klingon document, but you might have that information. Thanks, Spock. So Mbenga, of course, goes for a drink and joins Chapel in struggling not to lose it. So we cut to another flashback. Mbenga's talking to that wounded ensign that got his heart pumped, and strangely, the ensign kind of remembers having his heart grabbed. Yeah, that's happened.
This is the second now. It cuts to a Andorian, and it's like this is the second time in like 2 episodes that we've seen an Andorian.
We're getting some Andorian action. Fuck you, Jennifer. Okay. So yeah, apparently he wants Mbenga to help him go take out the General Dakra, our ambassador. Or if not, give him something called Protocol 12, which we saw at the beginning of the season, that fighty juice that Mbenga and Chapel dropped to go kick ass. Mbenga basically says, no, this is bad shit. You're not supposed to pump adrenaline and pain reduction into your body. So, yeah, that happens. Meanwhile, back at dinner, Ambassador Ra is getting on the subject of how he was changed on Jagal. So, yeah, we're going straight there. Mbenga agrees with him on that, so they talk about it, and Ra kind of almost admits to the things. But Ortegas replies, you want to take a crack at the Klingon?
Oh, yeah, it's Klingon Mach Tach Josh.
Or remain Klingon. And after hearing that, all of her friends died. Eventually, she stands up, and then she leaves. So Chapel then says she's going to go and see if Ortegas is okay so she can leave. Then Pike notices Mbenga's kind of white-knuckling the chair and has been doing so the whole time, so he sends him to check on the girls. But before he can leave, Ross stops him and says that he's been doing whatever the Klingon fighting is. He's been sparring with La'an, and he wants to try him out. Somehow, Mbenga doesn't punch the Klingon in the face. So, yeah. So, back on Jagal, we catch up with Ensign Pumpy Heart. He walks out. He's discussing kind of the futility of why are we fighting. And Mbenga kind of agrees, but points out that they need to fight this disease of war. Kind of alludes this is what the Klingons do. So, we have to fight. Of course, we cut to those Black Ops guys, including our Andorian, are going to make a run. Are preparing to make a run. Ensign Pumpy Heart strapped up and is going to go out. And Mbenga and Chapel get to watch this. So, wow, I forget some letters here. I obviously don't know how to type. So, any comment on that before I get into?
Well, I mean, you covered it pretty well.
Go ahead.
No, I would say you covered it pretty well. I was just saying that it's obvious that the ensign is being browbeaten to go into combat, and of course, he's going to die because they're always talking. It's a suicide mission. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote at this point prediction. He's a corpse. I wasn't wrong. So. We get back to the ship. Spock's talking to Chapel, apologizing for stupidity, and he wants to help. But she wants him to stay distant because she talks a little bit about the war, and Spock tries to be logical about it. So she's like, "Yeah, we're out of here. Thanks, Spock."
Yep, he screws up again. Like, I mean, he's just stepping on landmine after landmine.
Yeah.
He is the comic relief in this episode.
And it's not even funny. That's the depressing part. Because it's more about yeah, it's pain. Even the funny parts are not that funny. I'm struggling to try to write gags and jokes for this. I can manage because I've seen enough real life.
True.
So we get back to Chapel dodging more explosions. The problem is they got more wounded out there, and the transporters are offline, so they need to get them working. Unfortunately, to do that, they have to purge the buffers, and there's a guy in the buffer. And Vega reaches over and purges him to bring a bunch of other people. Kind of needs them of the many thing coming back there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your choice is this one guy gets deleted forever, and we can pull a lot of people in and save them. What do you have to do? So we get to the scene where Ra and Mbenga are sparring and discussing Jakal. Ra wants Mbenga as an ally, not a friend, because there's too much that they could never be friends. Mbenga questions about him killing his own men. Ra recounts the Klingons that he killed. It gets intense, but Mbenga pulls off and manages not to punch him in the face again, even though fist was like right there.
Yeah, I'm. It was good, but it did feel a little forced, like they were really kind of shoehorning a twist in the plot.
Yeah, could have used more Ortegas.
Yeah.
So we cut to Mbenga stepping in Sonic shower and turning up to maximum and not having the lower decks reaction because he has another he has some flashbacks and he has another panic attack with some flashbacks when the Black Ops team and Ensign Pumpyheart really being dead, like throat slit, completely dead. After seeing all this, he grabs a Klingon knife. So, at this point, I think we know he's kind of snapped and he's going to do something.
Yep.
Now, Una comes in and is discussing with Pike. Basically, she wants to get Ra off the ship as fast as possible because morale is tanking. So they take a shortcut to try to cut things short. We cut back to the past on Jagal. Mbenga talks to Chapel, gives her some of the fighty juice, and says he's going to go off and do some killing. Here's a way to beam me out at the very last moment. So that's kind of scary. So we cut to Ra comes to sickbay to talk to Mbenga. Mbenga basically tells him to fuck off, but Ra keeps going, and Mbenga calls him out for all the butchering. But we get a flashback, and we find out that the butcher of Jagal is actually Mbenga because we get scene of him stabbing Klingons in the head.
Yep, he's using the knife that was taken off that dead soldier, which ends up having the DNA on it of the 3 people that Ra is credited with slaughtering.
Yeah. So Ra tries to justify why he's not the butcher, but he let everybody think of it. And Mbenga opens up his box, and there's the knife.
I want the knife, please.
Yeah, so they get to struggling a little bit, and that knife ends up in Ra, and he dies.
Yep, and oddly enough, Christine sees this and doesn't do anything to stop it. I wonder why.
Yeah. So after a little bit of discussion, they determined that Ra was probably the aggressor, and Mbenga's probably not guilty because we can see this is the Butcher of Jakal's knife.
Mm-hmm. They just didn't know that it was M'Benga who actually had it.
Yeah. So they discuss. So Pike and M'Benga discuss Raw and the idea of redemption versus justice. And M'Benga pretty much does everything but confess to killing the ambassador. And it ends with him doing another log about the biobed that's working right finally. And in the very last shot, it flickers and starts now working right again. Just pretty much a symbol for life going on, but things being damaged forever.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's a good allegory. Overall, I would say that this is a very, very deep and very important episode to watch. Now, I mean, I know last week I said, "Oh, this is the best episode of season 2," and it still is for me. But this was incredibly powerful. Like, I mean, this is Star Trek going back to its roots and dealing with core social issues, stuff that doesn't get dealt with in the mainstream enough.
Because that's probably one of the success of this show. I mean, we have the tonal shift is extremely jarring. I mean, last week we had Boimler and Mariner.
Yep.
Hijinks cranked up to 11.
Yeah, the most fun episode of this entire season.
Without question. And next week we're going to have a musical episode.
Which decidedly will probably be the least fun. I could take that back. Celia Rose,
episode wasn't fun.
Yeah.
This episode was harsh.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there were a few moments of slight levity, but yeah, there weren't a lot of jokes to make here.
Exactly. But again, I mean, next weekend we're going to get the musical episode. From what the trailer shows, Celia Rose Gooding actually does a phenomenal job singing. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the crew, but we'll see.
I'm sure Melissa Navi will get the smallest part.
Of course. Although she probably has a wicked singing voice. Hey, Christina Chong, who plays Lan, she's actually an accomplished recording artist. So we're going to have some fun with this one. Oh, yeah.
But absolutely. Yeah, this is how you make a show really interesting. You could do these crazy tonal shifts to where you are watching an insane show, an insane hilarity comedy, and then next week you are in a vicious war drama.
Yeah, I think basically they're doing this at the end of the season because we had the Lower Decks crossover, which was fun. We had this one, which was very deep. Next week is supposed to be another fun episode, and then the last episode is entitled Hegemony, which
Gorn time.
I am guessing we're going to see the Gorn play a much larger role, which will bleed over into season 3.
Yeah, we haven't seen a Gorn episode that was a light episode.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I think the last time we saw a Gorn episode, Hemmer kind of got aliened.
Yep.
Yeah, that happened last time.
Yep. So the overarching theme for this episode is that war never changes. People do, but the thing, the thing that makes them that way doesn't. And it's a really interesting look at the justifications that people use for atrocities.
Yeah, because we see that in General Raw. And I have to agree, Robert Wisdom, who played Raw, credit where credit's due. I liked him almost instantly, even though we knew he was the guy that would be seen as the bad guy. And ultimately, he's proven to actually be technically a lying coward because he ran while his 3 warlords got stabbed in the head by M'Benga. So yeah. But here's somebody who realizes he did some really bad shit and he's trying to make up for it. It reminds me to a lesser extent of General Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender, who tried to conquer a city until his son got killed, at which point he gave up and he became much more peaceful and tried to guide his nephew out of things. And ultimately, he conquered Bang Sig Se to free it from the Fire Nation that he originally tried to conquer it with. So yeah. So a redemption arc is a possible, even in somebody who's done some terrible shit.
But although, despite this, it's also a good example that
Rod didn't quite get that.
There are some crimes that can never be forgiven, And the thing is that Ortegas kind of has that Styles feel from the original series, the one who is prejudiced against the enemy because of the atrocities they've committed, and it doesn't matter what steps they take to try to better themselves or undo what they did. The fact of the matter is that bell can't be unrung.
Yeah, and yeah. Speaking of that, credit to Babs, Jess, and Melissa for being able to accurately portray the trauma that these characters suffered, because basically they were reduced to seeing this as the other, the enemy, the monster that you have to kill. And can they get over it? They might be able to do with some Klingons, but not this one.
Yeah, this one isn't gonna.
This one is a special case.
Yep.
So yeah. Again, disappointed this wasn't my Ortegas episode. That Mbenga got the spotlight. Chapel got a good supporting main character, and Ortegas was kind of relegated to being just the angry one,
right?
And not having to deal with we're not seeing her trauma. And the worst part is, I'm guessing she had as compelling a story as Chapel and Mbenga.
I'm sure at some points we'll see it. We may even see some of it in the season finale against the Gorn.
But that's not going to be my Ortegas episode.
Maybe not.
Maybe she's the best singer of the group.
Oh my God. Anyways, so
yeah, I think we got to just wrap this up, because we can't really levity this one out, because this one was a great episode, but it was a hard one to work through.
Yeah, definitely a very difficult pill to swallow.
No happy endings here.
Exactly.
Just an ending.
So that's all the time we've got for this episode of Treknicity. Thank you for joining us as we talk about all things Star Trek. Please be sure to check us out on all of our wonderful socials listed above. Okay, see them up there. And join us as we enter our 10th year of Red Shirt Geeks by viewing all of our content at redshirtgeeks.tv. I'm Lars.
And I'm Patrick.
And remember, where did it go? Oh my God, no! Remember to go boldly and to rock out with your Spock out. And we will see you next time.